Let me ask you something most men avoid answering honestly, even to themselves. Have you ever been in a moment with a woman where everything felt like it was lining up? The eye contact lingered just a second too long. Her smile had that hidden meaning. The conversation flowed effortlessly. And yet, you walked away unsure? Unsure if she felt it too. Unsure if you imagined the whole thing. Unsure if you missed something important. That uncertainty, that quiet confusion is where most men live. Not because they lack intelligence. Not because they're incapable. But because they've been taught to look for the wrong signals. They expect attraction to be obvious, direct, almost loud. But that's not how it works. Attraction, especially from a woman, rarely announces itself clearly. It doesn't knock on the door and introduce itself. It moves subtly, quietly, almost invisibly. It hides in pauses, in tone, in energy shifts that most people overlook completely. And that's where everything begins to change. Because once you stop looking for obvious signs, you start noticing what was always there. A glance that holds just a bit longer than necessary. A question that seems casual but carries emotional weight. A shift in her posture when you enter her space. These are not accidents. They are expressions controlled, filtered, but real. The problem is, most men are trained to respond to words instead of energy. They listen to what she says, but ignore how she says it. They analyze sentences but completely miss emotional signals. And attraction lives in emotion, not logic. That's why a man can say all the right things and still fail, while another says almost nothing and succeeds effortlessly. It's not about lines. It's not about memorized techniques. It's about presence. Presence is the one thing that cannot be faked for long. It leaks through everything, your posture, your voice, your timing, even your silence. And women are exceptionally good at reading it. Not consciously, not in a calculated way, but instinctively. They feel it. They feel when a man is trying too hard. They feel when he is seeking approval. They feel when his confidence is dependent on their reaction. And the moment they feel that, something closes. Not dramatically, not visibly, but enough. Enough to shift the entire dynamic. Because attraction, at its core, isn't about convincing someone to like you. It's about creating a space where they feel something without needing to justify it. And that feeling cannot exist under pressure. This is where most men make a critical mistake. They believe attraction is something they must earn through effort. So they try harder. They speak more. They explain themselves. They attempt to prove value. But effort, when it comes from a place of needing validation, doesn't create attraction, it creates imbalance. It places her in the position of evaluator, and him in the position of applicant. And that dynamic kills desire before it even has a chance to grow. Because desire doesn't thrive in evaluation. It thrives in freedom. Freedom to feel. Freedom to explore. Freedom to lean in without pressure. When a woman feels like she has to decide about you too quickly, she withdraws. But when she feels like she can simply experience you, she opens. This is why the men who seem effortless are often the most effective. Not because they're perfect. Not because they have everything figured out. But because they are not trying to control the outcome. They are present in the moment, not trapped in their own head. They are not asking, "What should I say next?" They are experiencing, observing, responding naturally. And that creates something rare, a sense of ease. Ease is powerful because in a world where most interactions feel forced, calculated, or rushed, ease feels different. It feels safe. It feels genuine. It feels real. And real is what people crave, even if they don't say it out loud. Now here's where it gets deeper. Attraction is not just about how you act, it's about how you think. Because your thoughts shape your energy, and your energy shapes her perception of you. If your internal dialogue is filled with doubt, neediness, or fear of rejection, it will show. Maybe not in obvious ways, but in subtle shifts. A hesitation before speaking, a nervous laugh at the wrong moment, a slight break in eye contact when things get intense. These small details matter more than any line you could ever say, because they reveal your internal state. And your internal state determines whether she feels tension or comfort, whether she leans in or pulls away. This is why mindset is not just important, it's foundational. Without the right mindset, everything else falls apart. You can learn techniques. You can memorize phrases. You can study behavior. But if your core belief is that you are trying to get something from her, your actions will always carry that underlying tone, and she will feel it. On the other hand, when your mindset shifts from getting to experiencing, everything changes. You stop chasing outcomes. You start enjoying moments. You stop seeking validation. You start expressing yourself freely. You stop worrying about whether she likes you. You start discovering whether you like her. That shift is subtle, but powerful, because it changes the entire dynamic. Instead of trying to move forward step by step like a checklist, you allow things to unfold naturally. And when things unfold naturally, tension builds organically. Not forced, not artificial, but real. And real tension is what creates connection. Connection is what leads to attraction, not the other way around. Most men try to jump straight to attraction without building connection. They try to accelerate something that requires patience. But attraction is not a switch you flip. It's a process, a gradual build, a series of emotional moments that stack on top of each other until something clicks. And when it clicks, it feels obvious. But only in hindsight. In the moment, it's subtle. It's a look, a pause, a shared silence that doesn't feel awkward. Those are the moments where everything shifts. Not through effort, but through alignment. Alignment between your energy and hers. Alignment between what is said and what is felt. And once that alignment is there, things begin to flow. Not perfectly, not predictably, but naturally. And natural is always more powerful than perfect, because perfection feels rehearsed. Natural feels real, and real is what stays in her mind long after the interaction ends. Not the words, not the lines, but the feeling you created without trying too hard. The feeling she can't fully explain, but can't ignore either. That's where everything begins. There's a moment most people don't notice. It doesn't happen loudly. It doesn't announce itself. But it's the exact point where everything either moves forward or quietly fades away. It's the moment where energy shifts. Not through words, not through actions that are obvious, but through something far more subtle, something almost invisible, unless you know what you're looking for. It begins when tension appears, not awkward tension, not forced silence, but a kind of charged stillness, a space where neither of you feels the need to fill every second with conversation, where a pause doesn't feel empty, it feels meaningful. This is where most men panic, because silence to them feels like failure. They rush to fill it. They speak too quickly. They break eye contact. They laugh when nothing is funny. And in doing so, they break the very thing that was beginning to form. Because that silence, that tension, was not a problem. It was the signal that something real was starting to build beneath the surface. Attraction doesn't grow through constant noise. It grows in moments where words are no longer necessary, where presence becomes louder than conversation. But to stay in that moment, you need control, not control over her. Control over yourself, your impulses, your reactions, your need to do something. Because the truth is, the more you try to control the outcome, the more you lose control of the moment. And she feels that instantly. She feels when a man becomes reactive instead of grounded. When he starts chasing the moment instead of allowing it to unfold. That's when her energy shifts, not because she decided something logically, but because something inside her no longer feels aligned. This is why emotional control is not just important, it's essential. Not the kind of control where you suppress everything, but the kind where you remain steady no matter what happens. If she teases you, you don't overreact. If she pulls back slightly, you don't chase. If she tests the dynamic, you don't collapse under pressure. You stay the same, calm, present, unshaken, and that stability does something powerful. It creates contrast, because most interactions she experiences are unstable. Men who get overly excited too quickly, men who become distant when unsure, men who fluctuate based on her reactions. But when you remain consistent, you become different, and different is what captures attention. Not louder, not more aggressive, just more grounded. Now here's where it gets even more interesting. Attraction is not just about what you do when things are going well. It's about how you handle uncertainty. Because uncertainty is where authenticity is revealed. Anyone can act confident when everything is smooth, but when there's a shift, a hesitation, a moment where things are unclear, that's where most men lose their frame. They start questioning themselves. Did I say something wrong? Is she losing interest? What should I do now? And those thoughts don't stay in their head. They leak into their behavior. A slight change in tone, a subtle drop in confidence, an urgency to fix the situation, and suddenly, the dynamic changes because now, instead of leading the interaction, they are reacting to it. And when you react, you give away your position. You move from being the one who creates the experience to the one who's trying to maintain it. That shift is small, but it's everything. Because attraction thrives when there is direction. Not forceful direction, not controlling behavior, but a sense that someone is grounded enough to hold the moment without needing reassurance. This is what creates emotional safety. Not words, not promises, but consistency in energy. When she feels that you are not easily shaken, she relaxes. When she feels that you are not trying to impress her, she becomes more open. When she feels that you are not dependent on her reaction, she becomes more curious about you. Curiosity is powerful because curiosity pulls her in without pressure. It makes her want to understand you, to figure you out, to experience more of your presence. And that's where attraction deepens. Not through force, but through intrigue. Now, most men try to create intrigue through complexity. They think they need to be mysterious, unpredictable, or hard to read. But real intrigue doesn't come from confusion. It comes from clarity combined with restraint. You are clear in who you are, clear in how you carry yourself, clear in your presence. But you don't reveal everything at once. You don't rush the process. You allow things to unfold naturally. And in that unfolding, curiosity grows because she starts to feel like there's more beneath the surface. Not because you're hiding something, but because you're not trying to show everything. That balance between openness and restraint is rare. And rarity creates value, not artificial value, not forced scarcity, but natural value that comes from not overextending yourself. This is where many men make another mistake. They give too much too quickly, too much attention, too much validation, too much availability. And in doing so, they remove the space where attraction could grow. Because attraction needs space. Space to think. Space to feel. Space to wonder. Without that space, everything becomes predictable. And predictability in the early stages reduces tension. Not comfort in a positive sense, but a kind of flatness. A lack of emotional movement. And without movement, there's nothing to build on. This is why pacing matters. Not rushing forward, not holding back artificially, but moving in rhythm with the moment. Sometimes that means leaning in. Sometimes that means pulling back slightly. Not as a strategy, but as a natural response to the energy between you. And when that rhythm is right, everything feels effortless. Not because it is easy, but because it is aligned. Alignment removes friction. It removes the need to force conversations, to think too much about what to do next, to analyze every reaction. Things just flow. And when things flow, that's when real connection starts to form. Not surface-level interaction, but something deeper. Something that doesn't rely on constant stimulation. Something that exists even in silence. And that's the difference between attraction that fades and attraction that lingers. Because what lingers is not what was said, but what was felt. The way she felt in your presence. The way the moment felt different from others. The way things didn't feel rushed, forced, or artificial. That feeling stays long after the conversation ends, long after the moment passes. And it's that lingering feeling that brings her back into the memory of you. There's a moment most men never fully understand, even when they experience it. It's not loud. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't come with clear words or obvious permission. It lives in the space between what she says and what she feels. And if you're not present enough to notice it, it disappears just as quickly as it came. A woman doesn't decide everything logically in the moment. Her body moves first. Her emotions respond first. Her mind catches up later. That's why the most important signals are never verbal. They're behavioral, subtle, almost invisible to the untrained eye. She might still be talking normally, laughing, even teasing you. But underneath that, something deeper is happening. Her energy is shifting. Her attention is narrowing. Her guard is lowering, piece by piece, without her consciously realizing it. This is where most men fail, not because they lack looks or status, but because they lack awareness. They're either too inside their own head, overthinking every move, or too focused on getting somewhere that they completely miss where they already are. Because attraction isn't built in big dramatic moments. It's built in micro shifts. A slight pause in her speech when she looks at you. The way her voice softens without intention. The way she stops scanning the room and starts focusing only on you. These aren't accidents. These are indicators. And when those indicators start stacking together, something changes in the dynamic. It becomes less about interaction and more about connection. You'll notice it in the silence. Most people are uncomfortable with silence. They rush to fill it. They joke, they talk, they explain. But when a woman is genuinely drawn in, silence doesn't feel awkward to her anymore. It feels heavy, charged, alive. If she stays in that silence with you instead of escaping it, that's not coincidence. That's comfort mixed with curiosity. That's her testing what it feels like to sit in your presence without distraction. And if you break that moment too quickly, you kill the tension. Because tension is what creates desire. Not forced lines. Not rehearsed confidence. Not tricks. Tension. The kind that builds slowly when two people feel something but don't immediately act on it. The kind that makes her aware of you even when you're not speaking. And here's where it gets deeper. A woman doesn't just respond to what you do. She responds to what you don't do. When you don't rush. When you don't chase. When you don't try to force the outcome. That restraint communicates something powerful. It tells her you're not driven by lack. It tells her you're not desperate for validation. It tells her that your interest is intentional, not impulsive. And that alone separates you from the majority. Because most men react. Very few men remain still. Stillness, when it's real, not forced, not fake, is magnetic. It creates space. And inside that space, her imagination starts working. She begins to wonder instead of being told. She begins to feel instead of being convinced. And that's where desire actually grows. Not from pressure, but from possibility. Another shift happens in how she engages physically. Even without obvious contact. It's in proximity. Distance is never random. If she consistently positions herself closer than necessary, that's not accidental. If she leans in when she speaks, if she doesn't create space when there's an opportunity to, if she allows that closeness to remain, instead of correcting it, that's a signal, because proximity is comfort, and comfort is the gateway to everything else. But here's the mistake most men make in that moment. They try to escalate too fast. They assume closeness equals permission, and they move before the emotional timing is aligned. That's where everything collapses. Because attraction isn't just about what happens. It's about when it happens. Timing is everything. You can say the right thing at the wrong time and ruin it. You can make the right move too early and break the connection. But when the timing aligns, when her energy, her body language, her focus all move in the same direction, that's when everything flows naturally. No resistance, no confusion, no second dash guessing. Just progression. And that progression doesn't feel like something you're pushing. It feels like something you're both stepping into. That's the difference. Another layer most men overlook is emotional mirroring. When a woman starts matching your rhythm, your tone, your pace, that's not conscious behavior. That's subconscious alignment. If you slow down and she slows down, if you lower your voice and she responds in a softer tone, if your energy becomes calm and grounded and she settles into it, that's synchronization. And synchronization only happens when she feels connected. You don't force that. You allow it, because forcing anything breaks the natural flow, and women are extremely sensitive to forced energy. They can feel when you're trying to create something instead of letting it happen. That's why authenticity matters more than technique. Not the surface level version of authenticity people talk about, but real internal alignment, where your actions, your energy, and your intentions all match. No hidden agenda, no internal conflict, no need to prove anything. That kind of presence is rare, and rarity creates value. You'll also notice how she reacts to your attention, not just whether she likes it, but how she receives it. If your attention feels scarce, not because you're playing games, but because you're genuinely selective, it changes how she perceives it. She starts valuing it more. She becomes more engaged, more invested, because people don't chase what's constantly available. They lean toward what feels earned. And that doesn't mean ignoring her or acting uninterested. It means your attention isn't automatic. It's responsive. It's intentional. It's based on how she shows up, not just on your initial attraction. That creates balance, and balance creates attraction. When the dynamic becomes one-sided, when you're the only one leaning in, it loses its tension. But when both sides are gradually moving closer, step by step, without rushing, without forcing, that's when it builds into something real. And here's the part most people don't talk about. Attraction isn't just about her being drawn to you. It's also about her feeling safe being drawn to you. Those are two different things. She can feel attraction and still hold back if something feels off, if your energy is inconsistent, if your behavior doesn't match your words, if there's even a slight sense of pressure or expectation. Her guard comes back up instantly, not because she doesn't feel anything, but because she doesn't trust the lighter environment. And trust isn't built through words. It's built through consistency, through calmness, through emotional stability. When she senses that you're not reactive, not easily shaken, not dependent on her response to feel confident, that's when she relaxes. That's when she allows herself to feel more. Because now the space feels safe enough for her to explore that attraction without risk. And when a woman feels safe and attracted at the same time, everything changes. Her behavior becomes more open. More fluid. Less guarded. She stops filtering herself as much. She starts expressing instead of analyzing. And that's when you see the real shift, not in what she says, but in how she is around you. More present, more engaged, more connected. And if you're paying attention, not forcing, not rushing, not overthinking, you'll recognize that moment for what it is, not something to control, not something to manipulate, but something to understand. Because once you understand that level of interaction, everything becomes clearer. You stop guessing. You stop second guessing. You stop chasing. And instead, you start reading. Reading the space, reading the energy, reading the unspoken language that's always been there, but rarely noticed. And that's where everything shifts. Not outside, but inside you. Because the moment you stop trying to make something happen is the moment things finally start happening naturally.